Welcome back to another episode, Pete. How have you been?
I've been fantastic, and it's always awesome to be back in the studio recording another podcast. And we're actually Friday, and happy Friday to everybody. And Kayla, what have you been up to lately? Like, you've been pretty busy from what I hear.
We have, yeah. It's been a really full-on couple of weeks. We obviously, last episode, I talked about how we've been moving offices, so still going through the final bits and pieces of that. Still waiting for a few things to arrive. But yesterday, I was fortunate enough to attend the Help lunch for the Help charity in Brisbane at Brisbane City Hall, which was fantastic. Ended up being a bit of an IT congregation. You were there, Pete, and so were a few other people. So that was great. And they ended up raising, I think it was $2 million for the charity. So
Wow.
it was a great result. So what about you? What have you been up to?
Yeah, look, it was a fantastic event. And look, I think for us it was really great because Are You OK Day was yesterday. And I think it's important really to always take a step back and ask that question, especially in the IT space. You know, there's so many people that are suffering burnout, and it was great to see that PAX 8 has now got a new course in their training specifically to help owners deal with that burnout. And the keynote speaker yesterday, Bo, who was a paraplegic, spoke about that positivity. And I think, you know, it's always easy for us to focus on those things that aren't going right, but there's always so much that's going right in life as well. So I think he really put it in perspective about that positive energy. And for us, it was just great to sort of feedback. We did a Are You OK session in the office, and it was great just to reiterate that with some of our team members that were there as well yesterday.
Yeah, I agree. I think I loved his mindset. And he was asked a question on stage about, you know, is there anything you wish you could do? And he actually said, no. He said, I'm just focusing on being the best dad, the best business person that I can be right now. And he was so optimistic about what the future holds for his life. So it was very refreshing. But as always, always for this season, we have another wonderful guest joining us today. And today we are welcoming David Mitchell, CEO of Grassroots IT, a business that is making waves under his leadership. David brings a solid toolkit, an MBA, strong credentials in project management and experience across the consulting in a bunch of industries, which gives him a wide lens when it comes to solving Grassroots IT's problems. So off the clock, he's a father of 4 and a trail runner. And if he could pick a superpower, he tells me it would be super strength. David, welcome to Two Sides of the Table.
Thank you very much, Kayla. Good to be here.
Awesome. So talk to us about Grassroots IT. What's the background of the business? How did you come into it? Talk to us about what it does.
Very good question. Very long and winding road. Grassroots IT was founded about 20 years ago by Ben Love.
Yeah.
Ben is married to my sister, Annie. So I have been around Grassroots since before it was created. Been in Grassroots in a number of different capacities. So I have employed Grassroots from 3 different companies. So I was a client of Grassroots 3 times before I joined Grassroots. I was a consultant to Grassroots in HR and consultant to some of their clients in the past. So close relationship over a long period of time. And about 7 years ago, I think it's 7 years ago now, 6, I joined full time.
Wow. That's awesome.
That is
what a story.
Shortened story, yes.
Yeah, we don't hear that very often of, you being so closely associated with the business before you actually came into the business, which was fabulous. And I love the customer aspect as well. I think it brings us a completely different lens. And so talk to us about what the business does. You're not just a standard MSP, I'm assuming.
What's a standard MSP?
Good question. Good question.
So I think the history was a standard MSP. Ben was an early adopter of the MSP model. He's always been a bit of a leader in that area. So he's a long-term Evolve member, a long-term managed services aficionado, so to speak. Now we are probably moving more into the advisory side of MSP. But, to answer your question, it is an MSP at the moment, just with eyes to the future and to see where that's going to go.
Yeah. Fabulous.
And I think it's interesting because, there really isn't a standard MSP these days. I think, historically there was a playbook that played out, and that was that most IT businesses originated as a break fix. Someone call up, we would fix that. You'd have those sort of Manhattan charts with some months great revenue, other months not so great revenue. And then all of a sudden the tooling and technology with PSAs and RMMs meant that you'd be able to then, monitor more and, be more proactive. And, that was really the playbook, but both sort of, the Kaseya world as well as also the ConnectWise world really started to empower IT businesses to become managed service providers. But I think, we are definitely seeing a transition away from that. Like, that's not to say that that managed piece goes away, but, the offerings and what customers are looking for are far beyond just that help desk and being able to then support my printer not working or things like that. They're looking for more from their IT service providers. And I think Grassroots is definitely on the cusp of that, from what I hear.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm so glad you said that, David. Like, we're not, you said that you don't think every MSP is the same, because we have so many customers I have so many customers that say that to me at the beginning of our engagements is, we're just like every other MSP. We just do the same things. It's like, no, you don't. You've got a point of difference. And we've talked about this at length on this podcast about, carving out that niche and finding your point of difference. So I'm so glad that you don't have that mindset that, I'm just like every other MSP, because it's not the case.
Well, we try not to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So this is our founder series, and we've been interviewing a series of founders. Now, as you've said, you weren't the founder of the business, but you have stepped into that CEO role. What was the transition like to that? You'd obviously been quite associated with the business before you stepping into this role, so there was obviously that implicit trust there from Ben, the founder. But what was the catalyst? What happened there that made, that he was like, I'm going to step away and allow the right person to jump into his seat?
Well, he didn't really step away.
Okay.
He stepped aside a little bit, and
Yeah,
we shared some responsibilities.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen to start with.
Okay.
To start with, I came in from outside the industry. As you know, it was very close. I understood the business from a client's perspective. I was a technologist in my career from a strategy perspective, but I really didn't know the business. I didn't know the industry. So I actually started in as sales and a support, as in sales admin, to understand the systems. So it took probably 2 to 3 years of me learning the business pretty rapidly, learning the technologies, again, pretty rapidly, before we started to, we just keep dancing around who's best to do what.
Yeah, yeah.
It's very much, we call it a co-leadership model now.
Okay. So he's still very much involved.
Very much.
Yeah, awesome. And you've got that clear delineation of responsibility between what he does and what you do?
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said for that, because we often find that our best engagements work when there's clear lines of who's looking after what. And sometimes when those lines get blurred, it can be quite challenging to get things done, not just from the marketing side, but also just in the business in general. So it was really great that you had that clear.
Yeah, managing, look, we don't have big egos between us. So we're very, very happy to say, this is your job, this is my job. And we have changed jobs over time. So we just literally have a role description that we fit in with at the moment. Ben is sales and marketing and drives that. And he is also a mentor for service delivery and is looking at the horizons for how that can be improved. Whereas my role is really a little bit of vision of where we're going with clients and how we're going to engage with clients, and knitting together the service delivery, the sales and marketing, and the finance and admin. So they're different.
Yeah, fabulous.
And what was the catalyst to bring you in as CEO? So you'd obviously been working in the business and adding a lot of value across different roles. Was there a particular catalyst for that CEO role?
Well, we had to think of a name, and we came up with CEO because I was taking more responsibility for making decisions.
Yeah.
Just so we could leave delineate and who's doing things. So a general manager in an MSP or an IT firm the connotation there is more around service delivery and not really strategic.
Yeah.
My
Agree.
connotation
Yeah.
anyway, not really
The
a strategic.
business side. Yeah.
So Ben and I, as I said, it's very closely a close relationship with the strategic looking forward of the company. And the only real name that we came up with was CEO, because that also gives you some form of gravitas when you are talking to other bodies, clients, and partners,
Yeah.
vendors.
And the staff as well.
And the staff.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and just on that title, because I think titles are important because there's a certain persona that exists around that. Was there ever a thought about the role being a COO, so a Chief Operating Officer?
I have been a COO of other firms, actually. But again, a COO is more around the delivery of what's been decided. And that was 70% of my role, 30% is decide it. So COO didn't quite cut the mustard.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because I think there's going to be a lot of listeners in this podcast that, they've grown their business to a certain size. They're now thinking about how they bring additional leadership capability in to help them take their business to the next level. And, often I think there's a little bit of, I don't want to give up my title because I'm the founder. I should be the CEO. And I think it's really interesting the way that you've been able to create that effective dynamic to go, well, hey, we know what we're good at. And I think that's a really key important part as organizations grow is that, when you first start off, the single person, you are doing everything. Doesn't mean you're necessarily doing it well, but you're doing everything. And then as you grow, you have the opportunity to then bring in some additional skills and capability. And that sounds like that's the transition that you've sort of in the grassroots journey is very much about coming in and helping the business grow.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had different experiences to Ben. We're quite complementary in that way. So the CEO role was created for me. So there was no other CEO first. Ben's the managing director, has always been the managing director. So there was not that confusion. It's nearly like the evolution of the business allowed for a role of CEO.
Yeah. And just pulling on that thread a little bit then, you said you've had different experiences, Jaban. What's been the biggest sort of mindset shift you've had to make stepping into the CEO role versus the other roles you've had in the past?
Well, that's a good question. I've had a variety of roles in the past. A very short history is that my dad was the fourth generation builder, with a building business.
Okay, yeah.
So when I was 18, I was an apprentice carpenter. So I was a carpenter and joiner, did that and being a builder for 15 years. Then we developed a sports complex. So then I was a little bit more entrepreneurial and built a business that way with 4 other businesses. Then I studied, or at that time I studied the MBA, and then I was a consultant with some long-term gigs in companies, not-for-profits, mining, finance, a variety. So probably to answer your question, the CEO is a more long-term role, and there's responsibility for longer-term decisions.
Yeah, yeah. Can you attest to that, Pete? You've been in that role too.
Yes, definitely. And I think there's always a bimodal approach when you're in that executive leadership role is, there's short-term performance and, often there's longer-term transformation. And, the saying I used to have at MOQ is we need to perform whilst we transform. And that's also making sure that you've got that next horizon where you're focused on and how you're going to get there, but not taking your eye off the current prize in order to be able to make sure that those results are being delivered there. And I think that's the interesting thing about the CEO role is you are the visionary, you are setting the pace of the business, but also the direction of the business as well that you're going. And I've always used the analogy about will it make the boat go faster? A great book by Ben Hunt Robert Smith. It's really about how do you get everyone to then row in the same direction at the same pace and their oars in, because if we're not rowing in the same direction, we're never going to be able to achieve the outcomes that the business wants.
Absolutely. And there's always a friction between longer term and shorter term. And it's great to have that friction inside the business. People argue for making some changes now. And I'm often the one that goes, not quite so quickly.
Yeah.
But to sometimes to the detriment, but that's my personality. I go, just need to know it's not going to cause us grief in the medium and long term, but great friction to have. Great to have people in the business who are saying we need to do this now
Yeah.
and be able to discuss that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, and as people transition in business as well, is when you're moving from a purely operational focus. I think Jeff Bezos describes it very well. Is he expects his direct reports to make 3 decisions a year, and
Mm-hmm.
when you're in an operational role, you're often making 3 decisions every hour.
Yes.
And it's that move from just focusing on the urgent to then really start to focus on the important.
Yes, agreed.
Wow. 3 decisions a year. I reckon I make 30 decisions a day right now.
And that's often because those decisions are big bets. Like, are we going to introduce drones to do delivery? Are we going to open in a new market? Those really big things that are going to make a real dent in the business.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think some days it's like herding cats, David? Like you sort of trying to do 5 different things at once, or are you really sort of clear that that's not your life and you want to focus on sort of one thing at a time?
I'd love to be able to focus on one thing at a time. It is a challenge at the moment. We're getting through that challenge actually, but there's a lot of change at the moment.
Yep. Yep. A lot of change in the industry.
A lot of change in the industry, a lot of change in the economy, a lot of change in technology, lots of change. I mean, I've heard it called the perma-crisis because, in the past we've had time between crises. So now we have crisis after crisis after crisis so fast that you can't sit and expect the crisis to change and wait for it to change. You've got to be able to deal with the crises and keep moving on and work with the crises. So that in itself makes you work in the weeds sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
But it is my constant goal to pull out of the weeds. But it's all in a cycle too.
Yeah.
I'm not in the weeds all the time. At the moment, I'm a little bit in the weeds.
I think that's so refreshing to hear, particularly for someone like me. I find myself, we were talking about this with our guest last week or the week before. It was, we were talking about how, you're asking someone to do something that they're not passionate about anymore because that's, your job is to rise as that leader. And it's refreshing for me to hear because there are some days where I'm like, I'm so down in the weeds delivering, landing pages and EDMs and things like that because, we have a marketing assistant. She only works a couple of days a week. So sometimes I have to get in there and get my hands dirty. But it's refreshing for me to hear that you also have to do that sometimes. Obviously not on the same things, but because there are some days I put pressure on myself and I'm like, gosh, I shouldn't be doing this. I should be, up thinking strategically and, which I do. But sometimes you have to get down in the weeds, right? And you have to get your hands dirty. And I think I'm sure that's the same for you, Pete. You sometimes you have to get down and get things done.
But I think some of that comes about almost walking the shop floor.
Yeah.
Actually understanding where some of those challenges are and some of those problems are. And I remember even someone like Lindsay Fox, incredibly successful individual, up until not that long ago, used to still drive a truck because he wanted to understand what are the challenges that his drivers are having, how can he improve that experience, and the best way for him was to experience that firsthand. So I still think that, even in leadership roles, it doesn't get away from being out on the shop floor to understand where the pain points and challenges might be.
There is nothing wrong with attention to detail.
Yeah. Yeah, agree. And I think
Or
it's important.
OCD for some of us in the IT industry.
I think it's important as well to understand, like you said, those pain points and do like, what is it like as an employee in your business? What are they doing? Like, what, understanding that I think there's a power on that human side to bring that in. Is there any times you felt like you wanted to be the founder, David? Is there any moments where you were like, oh, I wish I had that experience that I could draw upon to help with a particular situation? I might be putting you on the spot here.
No, there's not. That's not my role.
Yeah. Yeah.
To know that sort of detail. In fact, sometimes that's a liability.
Yeah.
I know I can't do everything.
Yeah.
There is no time where I go, hang on, wait a minute, I just need to be the technical deliverer of this again because I can't do that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And as I said, it is great for me to know the history of the company, and I've been touching it for 20 years. So I kind of got the idea of the founder in there, and I've been a founder of my own businesses, so it's I just don't need to be a founder of this one.
You've had enough experiences in your life in your career to sort of warrant.
I have been trapped in businesses before, like a lot of founders are trapped in their own business, and I know what that's like, and I know what to do not to be trapped in a business. Yes.
What's been your biggest challenge of taking over? So 7 years you've been in this role?
I think about 2019.
Yeah, okay. What's been the biggest challenge that you've faced so far?
Look, change, identifying what change is needed, so the strategic vision of the change, changing people to bring them along. Like we've got employees there. We don't have much turnover, especially of the senior employees. So, when we employ someone 15 years ago, which is what I did for Grassroots, the business has changed. Like we were 4 people then, or 5 people.
Wow.
So they're 23 now. So the business is changing. So implementing change in our systems to support those employees, to support the teams, that's probably the biggest challenge, just to keep in front of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so obviously the industry is going through a lot of change at the moment. And look, you can't pick up the trade press or even the general press and actually not see the word AI there. And that's obviously driving a lot of change. How are you thinking about AI in Grassroots and the impact that will have on people?
AI is a big thing, isn't it? Actually, I've just read a book called Nexus. Have you read that one?
No, it's actually on my Kindle to read list actually at the moment.
Yeah, it's a long book, but it's a history of information systems from the Stone Age to now, including AI, and it's how impactful information systems has been on the human evolution, the human development. And Harari reckons that one of the core human capabilities is to create and share stories. It separated us from the Neanderthal and allowed us to be democratic, all that sort of industrial and political improvements. There's been a lot of technology change since the Stone Age and now, but AI is the first one that can emulate humans' core capability of creating and sharing stories. So that's something to keep an eye on, I think. Now, for Grassroots IT, I think the biggest impact on AI, other than the obvious, which is some automations in support, help desk, is probably going to be the interface between the client and us understanding the client. If we need to be building some more tools to more quickly and more clearly understanding what the needs of the client are and being able to implement those cost effectively, quickly.
Yeah, and I think that customer experience piece is key, especially differentiating, but also then being able to meet the customer in the way that is best to engage with them as well at that point in time.
Absolutely.
So understanding what their problems are, but also understanding where they're going as an organisation to help with that. And I think that customer experience thing and the ability to accelerate that is so powerful, even with simple things like agents with chatbots, being able to then, let's face it, I don't like to say picking up the phone and calling someone. And there was an interesting stat I saw at the HubSpot conference last week that said that 82% of people would much prefer to self-help rather than actually then rely on somebody else to do that. So being able to lean into that opportunity.
I don't agree. I think you love picking up the phone, Pete.
I love picking up the phone, selling something to somebody, but not necessarily being told my call's very important and being put on hold.
Yeah, with the horrible lift music. Awesome. So, I mean, outside of work, you run a lot. You've got 4 children.
I have run.
Okay.
A couple of knee and ankle issues at the moment, so more the walking and the hiking, but I love to run if I can.
Yep, love that. How do you balance it all? 4 children, and obviously your role is quite full on. What's your secret?
Oh, a bit of flexibility, a bit of planning.
Yep.
I do work from home a few days a week.
Yep.
So that's, I've got, as you said, 4 kids, 2 still at school, 1 just about to finish grade 12. So the kid thing is becoming less and less of an issue. Still the Uber dad to a lot of things. And, we get the call through the day. I need to get here. I need to get there. So, we're flexible. That's probably it.
Yep.
Planning. I get up early.
Yep.
I get things done. I'm a bit of a fan of flow, and wake to flow is one of my techniques. I get up and just start at 5 or 5:30, and just get into something that's pre-prepared for the morning. A bit of deep work. I get a lot done that way
Before the world wakes up.
Yeah,
That's
right. I just need something.
Yeah.
I love that fine flow. What a lot of people don't realise was that MOQ was actually going through a rebrand before we sold the business, and that was one of our taglines: is helping customers find flow, because it's that Zen-like state that when everything's working and technology is good, you're able to get the real deep work done. And find flow was one of those taglines that we were going to relaunch with that brand, and I think that's a great call out.
It's a trigger for me, Peter, that you bring that up, because there's some of my best work that never saw the light of day. Okay, so if you could have your super strength, what would you use it for in the business world?
What did I say my super strength was?
Super strength.
Oh, yeah, okay. My strength is my strength is super strength.
Your superpower is super strength.
Okay, superpower. That makes more sense. Super strength. Well, firstly, probably to be strong for myself. One of my core values is courage, and you need strength to be courageous. And courage is really about doing things that you don't really want to do and doing them consistently. I find it takes courage to do that. So I would probably leverage that a little more if I had a better superpower. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so I know that you guys have just opened a brand new office here in Brisbane, and for what I hear, it's spectacular. And you spoke about that you work a couple of days at home at the moment, and we're seeing a trend in a lot of MSPs and IT service providers to move back into office. And how are you thinking about that, especially when you've got a brand new office? About what does that hybrid work look like moving forward?
Well, the brand new office is helping me move back to working from work, because I didn't have a desk up until the brand new office. I was in the boardroom because we expanded and I was ousted.
Yeah.
So, but in reality, the built environment is so important for culture, I find, in the office, and there's a huge need for personal interaction. I think the research is minimum 2 days a week, that if you get 2 days, you can deal with others. Under that, you just lose connection. And you spoke earlier about walking the floor. You spoke about understanding the trials and tribulations of what's going on. We've been in the new office now for 2 weeks, and it's made an enormous difference. Yeah, we've got sunlight coming through the windows. It was a bit of a cave with the last one. We've got everyone on the same floor. Last time we were separated by just a staircase, but 2 different floors. So now we have desks for everyone. We have parking. We have interaction. We've got a nice place. We can have a coffee. It's much better for working from work. I still do some work from home when I do back-to-back Teams meetings and things like that, because I'm set up best for that there. But we do have breakout rooms that I can do that from work. So, yeah, big fan of the office.
Yeah, I have to say the same. We have a mandatory 2 days a week in the office as well, just for that team connection so the team can see each other, and I think it makes a world of difference, because you can only form so much of a connection on a Teams call, right? But when you've seen someone in person and then you jump onto the Teams call with them, say later in the week, the interaction is so much different because you've met them in person. So I definitely agree with you. It's helped us as well come back to the office, and everyone wants to see and be in a fresh new office. Like my team was getting a little bit itchy working from home, because they knew that I was sort of coming in, making sure things were going how they were going. And, and then, they were getting a bit itchy not being in there. So, yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think there's something to be said for having a nice space to go.
Yeah. And look, you talked about AI earlier. AI, I think, is actually changing the structure of teams or it will change the structure of teams in IT firms. So what used to be the traditional apprenticeship and pyramid structure of you start here and you work your way up is changing a little bit, that now it's more fast-tracked. So how then do you transfer skills quicker if people are working remotely? So we actually need our senior people working in with the junior people, not all the time, but enough time to transfer those people skills, those professional skills, those sometimes technical skills, but usually it's the people, professional and soft skills to the juniors. So that fast track is happening.
Yeah, and that's that triangle is the traditional professional services model of the, associate, principal, etc. And what used to differentiate those individuals was their technical knowledge and technical skills. And the reality is with AI, a graduate is not that far away from a principal in regards to the knowledge, but it's then knowing when to apply it in the right scenario. But more importantly, the human context and being able to then work with a customer, understand, or don't say that because, this is not going to go down that road. And it's that seeing that movie play out from a human interaction perspective that's very difficult to teach just with a chat prompt. It needs to be that osmosis of, going through those experiences.
It's the nuance.
Yeah, the nuance.
And the judgment that is difficult.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Look, I listened to the Andreessen Horowitz podcast AZ16, and look, obviously this is my favorite podcast, but shortly after that is AZ16, and they recently released the top 100 AI apps that are being consumed out there today. And so, obviously, all the usual ones that you'd expect, like Claude and ChatGPT, are in those sort of top 5. But then it becomes human interaction apps. So almost like dating apps and friend apps where people are able to try and build those human connections. And I think one of the reasons for that is, that 100% remote means that people are thriving and wanting those interactions that they're not getting and turning to technology for that.
Agree. I was watching a YouTube video last night about the importance of human connection and friendship in particular. And the increased rates of anxiety and suicide and depression and all of those horrible mental health, diseases. Friendship actually combats like 90% of those cases, because people feel like they've got a team they can go to or a tribe they can go to. And it's sort of similar, putting my marketing hat back on. It's sort of similar when you think about it from a customer perspective. Like, you are trying to find that tribe of customers that you serve and that your brand serves, so that they know that when they're going through a crisis, they can pick up the phone and call you.
And I think, Seth Godin described it really well. He actually called it finding your tribe, basically, if you think about some of that marketing principle. And it's really about finding 100 customers. Because if every business had 100 customers, they'd be incredibly successful in that.
That's it. Well, thank you so much, David, for joining us today on the podcast.
Welcome.
If people are looking to get in contact with you, what's the best way?
Probably the Grassroots website at the moment. I'm on LinkedIn.
Yeah, perfect.
Grassroots, that is probably it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much. And Pete, thank you so much for joining me on the other side of the table again.
Thanks, Kayla. It's always wonderful to be here. And thanks, David, for what was a really insightful session, because I think for many business owners that are those founders, just understanding that they don't have to do it all themselves, that there are other people out there that enable them to be able to continue to have that visionary and drive that journey forward. So it's refreshing in our Founders series to have you on. So thanks for your insights.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.